The red light on Fifth Avenue blinked with indifference, as if mocking the humans caught beneath its gaze. A late winter drizzle glazed the asphalt, blurring the reflection of skyscrapers in shallow puddles. Inside a black luxury sedan parked at the front of the line, Cameron Thorne barely noticed the traffic. His fingers tapped against the leather steering wheel in restless, rhythmic tension. Cameron wasn't just any driver in the stream of Manhattan congestion. With the poised composure of a man used to commanding boardrooms and broker rooms alike, his very posture exuded a quiet authority that made people straighten up without knowing why. He was the CEO of Blake & Harlan Global Strategies, a billion-dollar consulting firm known for reshaping Fortune 500 companies. His name opened doors in government and finance alike. At 48, with silver-flecked temples and a jaw chiseled by genetics and willpower, he had mastered the art of control, his boardroom, brand, and time. He was a man whose presence silenced rooms. Yet, for the fourth consecutive day, none of that control mattered. It felt as though the gears of his well-oiled life had been stripped, leaving him skidding helplessly, like a pilot gripping the yoke of a plane that no longer responded. His daughter, Ivy, was still missing. The police had done their rounds. Private investigators were paid and dispatched. Media buzzed with headlines about the disappearance of the CEO's golden girl. But no leads, no ransom, no sighting. Cameron had watched entire empires bend to his will, but now the silence was paralyzing. It felt like staring into the void of a closed deal that never comes. Then, the boy appeared. It was almost cinematic, the way it happened. Cameron wasn't sure what caught his eye first: the wiry frame darting between cars with practiced ease, or the candy bars clutched in one hand while the other reached into windows, offering sugary smiles to disinterested drivers. The kid couldn't have been older than 12. Wet sneakers slapped the pavement. Torn hoodie, unzipped. A thin, cold face built by street weather and hunger. But that wasn't what made Cameron's fingers freeze mid-tap. A necklace was around the boy's neck, bouncing lightly against his chest. A silver chain, a butterfly pendant, dainty, diamond-encrusted wings that shimmered even through the blur of rain. The exact necklace Cameron had commissioned for Ivy last Christmas. Unique, handmade, one of a kind. He stared, heart hammering. The red light turned green, and cars honked. But Cameron threw open his door. "Hey, kid!" The boy flinched, eyes widening. Cameron didn't think. He ran. Behind him, angry drivers yelled as doors slammed and tires screeched. But all Cameron saw was the necklace vanishing into the crowd, worn by a boy who shouldn't have it. Water splashed up his pants. His shoes skidded. For a man who closed deals across continents, Cameron looked suddenly like a father chasing a ghost. "Wait. Please. I just want to talk." The boy turned once, briefly. His eyes, dark and sharp, scanned Cameron, not just with fear, but with experience. The way prey measures predator. He stopped near a subway entrance, chest rising fast. Then, voice thin but firm, "I didn't steal it." Cameron stopped, panting. "Where did you get that necklace?" The boy's hand instinctively touched it. He hesitated. Something in Cameron's voice cut through the city noise. It wasn't power. It wasn't a threat. It was desperation. "I found a girl," the boy said. "She gave it to me. Told me to find her dad." The air left Cameron's lungs. Cameron's lungs burned as the drizzle turned to sharp rain, slicing across the skyline like glass needles. The boy stood under the cracked awning of a closed bodega, half shielded from the wet. He looked like he might bolt again at any second. Cameron raised his hands slowly, like approaching a cornered animal. "I'm not here to hurt you. I swear. That necklace, it belonged to my daughter. Her name's Ivy. She's been missing for 4 days." The boy blinked, his chest still heaving. The butterfly pendant swung in slow rhythm with his breath, almost taunting Cameron. Ivy, he said, testing the name on his tongue. She told me not to trust grown-ups. Cameron nodded. She's right not to. A pause. The kind that stretches across worlds. Then, she was in a building. Near the tracks. Looked abandoned. I thought she was dead when I first saw her. The breath caught in Cameron's throat. Is she still there? I don't know. I left her water and crackers. She said she was waiting for her dad. He looked down. I told her I'd find you. What's your name? Cameron asked, his voice cracking despite himself. Jalen. Jalen. Can you take me to her? Jalen hesitated. Yeah. But if I do, you can't bring cops. I won't. And you have to promise whatever happened to her, you won't freak out. She's scared. Real scared. Cameron nodded solemnly. You have my word. They took the subway. Cameron wanted to protest the thought of taking public transport in his soaked $1,000 shoes, sitting beside coughing strangers while his daughter could be bleeding somewhere, but he held it in. Jalen's rules were the only path to Ivy. And if the boy was telling the truth, he had already done more than the entire NYPD. During the ride, Jalen spoke in fragments. Ivy had bruises, rope marks on her wrists. She barely ate. Slept with one eye open. She had nightmares about someone she called Uncle Drew. She whispered threats into her pillow, not realizing Jalen was listening. Cameron sat frozen, numb. He remembered Drew Spencer, his company's COO, Ivy's godfather. The man who insisted they add extra security just weeks ago. The same Drew who sat in his home 2 nights ago, holding Cameron's trembling hands, telling him not to lose hope. Jalen noticed his silence. You know who that is, don't you? Cameron only nodded. I heard him. He was talking to someone on the phone. Said, once the transfer clears, the brat's expendable. The words carved into Cameron like ice. His jaw tightened, the tremble in his hands now boiling into something darker. When they reached the neighborhood, a forgotten corner of the Bronx, Jalen led him through alleys and past graffiti-tagged walls. Finally, they stood before a crumbling red brick building, windows boarded, an iron door rusted shut but slightly ajar. She's inside, basement. Watch your step. Cameron's shoes crunched over broken glass as they descended. His breath echoed off the narrow stairwell. Then he saw her, Ivy, 9 years old, curled up on a mildewed mattress, arms hugging a tattered teddy bear. Her eyes opened slowly. Daddy? He dropped to his knees. I'm here, baby. I'm here. Cameron gathered Ivy into his arms, with the tenderness of a man who had just been reunited with the only thing in the world that made sense. Her tiny frame trembled against his chest. She was light, too light, the kind of weight that signaled hunger, stress, and fear had done its worst. He rocked her gently, shielding her from the cold air and the broken world outside that had dared touch her. I thought you wouldn't come, she whispered, voice hoarse and dry. I thought... He was right. Who? Cameron asked, already knowing the answer. Uncle Drew, she said, barely audible. He said, you'd forget me. That your company was more important. Cameron felt something break deep inside. A dam that had held back his rage and guilt for 4 days. But he swallowed it all. Now wasn't the time. He stroked her tangled hair and whispered, I will never choose anything over you. Ever. Jalen crouched nearby, watching the scene unfold with a strange detachment. He had lived long enough on the streets to know this kind of reunion didn't always end with hugs. Sometimes it ended in shouting or silence. But this felt real. I brought her water, he said quietly. Tried to get fruit, but the bodega guy caught me. Cameron looked up at him. You saved her life. Jalen shrugged. She asked for her dad. That's all. Cameron didn't have words for what he felt. Gratitude? Guilt? Awe? None of them were enough. He reached into his coat, pulled out his wallet, and froze. Jalen's eyes narrowed. If you're about to pay me, I'm walking. Cameron blinked. What? I'm not a stray. And I didn't do it for money. I didn't mean. Cameron exhaled, then put the wallet away. You're right. I'm sorry. Jalen looked away. I can show you where he goes. Drew, I know his other place, and I heard him talk about some papers he needed you to sign. Something about shares. Cameron's blood ran cold. His company. While he'd been searching for Ivy, Drew had stepped in and offered to handle day-to-day operations. Just until Cameron could focus again, he remembered the legal documents that had rushed to his inbox. He hadn't even read them. He'd trusted Drew for 20 years. He's using her, Jalen said. Not just to hurt you, to take everything. Outside, the wind howled between buildings like a warning. Cameron rose, still holding Ivy in his arms. Jalen, I need your help. The boy blinked. What kind of help? I need to know everything you've seen, heard, every name, every face. If what you're saying is true, this isn't just a kidnapping, it's a hostile takeover. Jalen hesitated. You mean like company war? Yes, Cameron said. And it's not just Drew. If he's smart, he's not doing this alone. Jalen nodded slowly. I can listen. People don't notice me. That's kind of my thing. Cameron laid Ivy gently on a cleaner part of the mattress and slipped off his coat to cover her. He pulled out his phone, but hesitated again. No cops, remember? Jalen warned. I wasn't calling them. Cameron texted a number. One contact. One woman. The only person outside his company he trusted completely was Natalie Park, a former federal prosecutor who now ran a private firm specializing in corporate sabotage. He sent one message. Emergency. Need you. Come alone. Then he turned to Jalen. From now on, you stay close. Don't talk to anyone about this. And if anyone asks anyone you never saw Ivy. Understood? Jalen nodded. They left the building quietly. Ivy now asleep in Cameron's arms. He hailed a black SUV from a private app, something untraceable. 20 minutes later, they were in a private medical facility uptown, under a false name. Cameron paid cash. No digital trail. While Ivy was treated for dehydration and examined for injuries, Cameron and Jalen waited in the sterile hallway. Jalen paced. Cameron stared at the floor, jaw clenched, mind racing. When Natalie arrived, she didn't ask questions. One look at Cameron's face told her this was personal. She walked into the corridor like a woman preparing for a legal war. What happened? She asked. Cameron told her everything quietly, but with a fire behind every word. Natalie listened, scribbling notes in her leather-bound planner. Tell me what you need, she said at last. I need proof. I need to know what Drew's done, what he's planning. I want his entire scheme exposed. You'll get it, Natalie said, but this can't go through traditional channels. Not yet. If he's moving this fast, he's already planted people in your systems. Legal, financial, security. You'll be feeding your plans right into his hands. Then we go off the grid, Cameron said. No emails, no calls. Face-to-face only. We plan this like a war. Jalen looked between the two of them. You sure you want to do this? Cameron's eyes didn't waver. He came for my daughter. Now I'm coming for everything he thinks he owns. Natalie gave a thin, fierce smile. Let's bring down a king. Natalie moved with the precision of someone who had brought down giants before. She laid out a temporary war room in the back of the hospital's executive lounge whiteboard. Post-it notes, burner phones, and a clean laptop, untraceable to Cameron's name. I want every financial document Drew had access to in the last 10 days, she said, tapping a pen to her notebook. Email logs. Access cards. Any sudden outages. Patterns. Cameron leaned over her shoulder. He sent me a packet the day after Ivy disappeared. Urgent authorization forms for a few partnerships we'd been entertaining. I didn't read them. I just signed. Classic. Distract the CEO. Seize control while he's grieving. Jalen sat across the room, flipping through a bag of pretzels Natalie had given him. This Drew guy. He rich like you? Richer now, probably, Cameron muttered. I heard him say something to someone named Carter, Jalen added. That once you were out of the way, he'd be able to buy out the board. Cameron stiffened. Carter Lee. Board chair. Silent partner. Drew must have cut him a deal. Natalie looked up. You need eyes inside your own building. Trusted ones. And fast. Cameron shook his head. They'll be watching every corner now. My assistant's loyal, but if they suspect her, she's done. I'll go, Jalen said suddenly. Natalie chuckled. You? They'll never let you near the elevators. Exactly, Jalen said. Nobody looks at janitors. Especially kids pretending to be messengers. I've done it before. Natalie's expression shifted. She wasn't humoring him anymore. Kid's right. We might have our ghost agent. Cameron knelt to Jalen's level. You don't have to do this. You've already done enough. Jalen's gaze didn't flinch. This Drew guy? He hurt her. He laughed about it. And he talked like kids, like me, didn't matter. That's exactly why he's going to lose, Cameron said. Within hours, the plan was set. Natalie would dig through the financial wreckage from the outside. Following the digital fingerprints Drew had carelessly left behind, Cameron would remain out of sight, communicating through a rotating schedule of in-person meetings and written messages passed through trusted allies. Jalen, with a forged ID and a delivery uniform borrowed from a contact of Natalie's, would begin runs inside the headquarters of Lexbridge International Cameron's empire, now occupied by his own Judas. The next morning, Jalen slipped into the marble lobby with a parcel under one arm and a disposable coffee cup in the other. No one paid him any mind. Over the next 2 days, he mapped the first 10 floors, memorized the security schedules, and overheard names, times, and access codes. He sat near the executive pantry one mid-afternoon while 2 lawyers discussed the final push. Drew's got Carter in his pocket, one said. Once they get those Korean investments cleared, Cameron's stake drops below 30%. Didn't he find his daughter? The other asked. Isn't this bad timing? Kid's fine. Honestly, better for optics. Cameron can resign with dignity. The press loves a grieving father. Jalen clenched his jaw and scribbled notes in his messenger pad. Meanwhile, Natalie traced a trail of wire transfers, $6.3 million, funneled through a chain of shell companies. Drew had quietly opened in the Caymans. One linked directly to a contractor, consulting on the company's infrastructure upgrade. Drew wasn't just stealing the company, he was draining it. At night, Cameron barely slept. He stayed in the Bronx, across the street from the hospital where Ivy recovered, under an assumed name. She was safe, but not whole. Daddy, she asked on the second night, why did Uncle Drew say you'd leave me? Cameron held her hand gently. Because he wanted you to be afraid. People like that, they lie to make themselves feel powerful. Is he going to get away with it? He kissed her forehead. Number. Not even close. The third night, Natalie called Cameron into the temporary command center with something close to a smirk on her face. We got him. She spun the laptop toward him, showing a trail of time-stamped access logs and financial transfers. This right here. This is the kill shot. Drew used your temporary signature authority to approve a transfer of $12.8 million, but he routed it through his personal shell company. And that, my friend, leaves a very big fingerprint. Cameron scanned the data, blood boiling. And the board? Natalie nodded. They're being primed. One of our allies inside the legal team has started seeding doubts quietly. But it won't be enough. We need something. Visual. Public. Just then, Jalen burst through the door, panting. They're planning something. Tomorrow. Some press event. Drew's going to announce a leadership transition. He's calling it a unified restructuring in light of recent family circumstances. Cameron's hands curled into fists. He's going to make it look like I'm stepping down to care for Ivy. Worse, Jalen said. He's got a journalist. Big-time outlet. They're going to write the article like it's a graceful exit. CEO finds daughter. Rethinks priorities. Passes torch to trusted partner. You're about to be erased. Natalie stood up. We go tonight. Cameron looked at her. What do you mean? She smiled. We make the first move. Tonight. Quietly. Smartly. No press. No lawyers. Just exposure. By 10 p.m., they had assembled everything. Jalen had secured internal memos from Drew's office trash. Natalie's contact at the SEC confirmed that Drew's shell companies were already under suspicion, and Cameron had something more valuable than evidence. He had Ivy. He recorded a short, raw video. No lighting, no script. Just a father speaking into the camera. 4 days ago, my daughter disappeared. While I searched for her, someone I trusted tried to dismantle everything I built. I'm not stepping down. I'm stepping in. He then attached internal documents, proving Drew's involvement in the false contracts, doctored financial statements, and most damning of all, a recording Jalen had captured of Drew laughing with Carter Lee, saying, by the time Cameron finds his kid, he'll be broken. That video and evidence package dropped on every major business news outlet and social media the next morning. It went viral in 3 hours. Lexbridge's stock halted by midday. The board called an emergency meeting. And Drew? He walked into the press event with confidence and walked out into a hailstorm of reporters screaming. Did you orchestrate a child's kidnapping for profit? By evening, Natalie, Jalen, and Cameron sat in the temporary war room watching the news. Drew had been suspended. The board was launching an independent investigation, and the Department of Justice had requested all company financial records. You're not done, Natalie warned. This is just chapter 1. He's going to fight back. I'm counting on it, Cameron said coldly. Jalen raised an eyebrow. What now? Cameron stared out the window. Now? He said. Now we stop playing defense. The fallout came faster than anyone expected. By the time Cameron stepped into his temporary office hidden inside a warehouse, Natalie had repurposed as an off-grid command center. The video had crossed 2 million views. Dozens of media outlets were dissecting every frame, from the trembling edge in his voice to the pixelated printouts of forged documents he'd pinned behind him on the corkboard. On CNBC, the headline read, CEO's Fury. Cameron Thorne strikes back with accusation of corporate coup. But this wasn't just about business anymore. Beneath the glitz of corporate sabotage was something far more primal. A father betrayed, a child weaponized, a friend turned adversary. And now, the world knew it. Natalie swept into the room with a stack of printouts and a power bar clenched between her teeth. We've cracked open a vault, she said, muffled, and there are rats pouring out. Cameron didn't respond immediately. He stood by the window, watching trucks back in and out of the freight yard. His suit jacket lay across the chair behind him, sleeves rolled, shirt wrinkled. The polished image of Lexbridge International's legendary CEO had been replaced with something leaner, more dangerous, like a lion stripped of its golden mane, still bearing fangs. How many? he finally asked. 6 board members are in contact with Drew, Natalie replied. 2 of them moved money in sync with his Cayman transfers. And we found a third, Judge Marshall. He brokered Drew's earliest shadow deals 5 years ago. During a merger, you were too busy to oversee directly. Cameron turned, eyes narrowing. The old man? He's a friend of my father's. Exactly, she said. This goes deeper than Drew's ambition. It's generational, structural. You weren't just betrayed by one man. You inherited a rot that's been festering under your nose for years. That stung, but it made sense. While he'd been building an empire, delegating trust like currency, others had been carefully laying traps, slowly pulling thread by thread from the foundation until the structure collapsed. He sank into the leather chair, elbows on his knees. And the media? Split, Natalie said. Some outlets are skeptical. Too convenient, they say. Others smell blood. And you know how they get when they smell blood. Hyenas. She nodded. Smart hyenas. With PR teams. Jalen burst in then, out of breath, eyes wide. You need to see this. He held up a tablet. A video had surfaced. Leaked footage from inside Lexbridge HQ Drew in a boardroom, denying all accusations. But it was what he said that twisted the knife. Cameron's been under emotional strain. The loss of his daughter, the trauma, it's tragic. But he's not well. I think we all saw it coming. This isn't a corporate battle. It's a mental health crisis. Natalie's lip curled. He's painting you unstable. Cameron smiled, slow and bitter. Good. Let him. What? Let him underestimate me again. He keeps thinking I'll play by the rules, that I'll care what people think. Jalen's brows pinched. Don't you? I used to, Cameron said, when my reputation protected my daughter. But now? He stood, shoulders rolling with slow tension. Now, I'm not protecting a name, I'm protecting a future. Drew's plan was textbook manipulation, weaponizing empathy, painting the opposition as unstable, and reframing his betrayal as damage control. In the press conference aired just hours after Cameron's exposé, he sat flanked by legal counsel and Lexbridge's new interim communications director, a woman who once ran presidential campaigns. The message was surgical. Mr. Thorne has endured unimaginable stress, Drew said, voice low and perfectly pitched with concern. And while we understand his emotional state, it's our duty as a board to shield the company from volatility. This is not about power, it's about stability. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Stability. It triggered all the right instincts in investors, journalists, and employees, especially those who'd spent the last 4 days afraid their paychecks might vanish in the storm. And it was working. Stock dipped slightly, then leveled. One outlet printed the word breakdown in its headline. Another quoted an anonymous board member suggesting Cameron was having a grief-induced psychotic episode. Natalie's jaw clenched as she read the feeds aloud. They're gaslighting you, Cam. He's turning the world against you. While you're still bleeding. Cameron said nothing. He sat on the floor, back against the steel wall, one hand idly spinning Ivy's necklace between his fingers. Do you want to release the hospital footage? Jalen asked. Show Ivy recovering? Show the burn marks? No, Cameron replied. She's not a pawn. Then we have to shift the story. Fast. He's controlling the narrative. Cameron looked up. That's exactly what I'm about to take from him. He rose, calm and cold, like the eye of a hurricane forming in silence. We're not going to scream louder. We're going to whisper smarter. That night, while Drew slept under the illusion of victory, Cameron's team went underground. Natalie activated a dormant channel in the media sphere, a disgraced but still followed investigative blog called Blind Ledger, known for exposing finance world scandals before the mainstream dared to touch them. Cameron didn't just feed them evidence. He fed them context. The timing of Drew's concern for Cameron's health aligned perfectly with key transfers from the company's R&D budget. A quietly buried HR complaint from 6 months earlier filed by an intern against Drew had mysteriously disappeared. And most damning of all, a hidden clause in the interim leadership contract, naming Drew acting CEO, signed 4 days before Ivy went missing. The article dropped at 3:12 a.m. It didn't trend immediately, but it didn't have to. It spreads in dark group chats, on finance subreddits, in startup Slack channels, and private investor circles. By morning, a phrase was trending in the corners of the internet that truly mattered. The CEO coup. Inside Lexbridge HQ, Drew watched the metrics with growing unease. The term was beginning to crawl into the mainstream. "What the hell is CEO coup?" he snapped at his communications director. She didn't answer immediately. "Kill it," he growled. "Buy Google ads. Flood the hashtags. Push out press with mental health advocates. Flip the damn narrative back." But it was already too late. At 9:06 a.m., a whistleblower leaked a signed email chain confirming Drew's plan to vote Cameron out before the board was even alerted about Ivy's disappearance. By noon, CNBC had called it the most calculated backroom betrayal in modern corporate history. By 4 p.m., one of the board members who'd quietly distanced himself resigned and posted an open letter accusing Drew of manipulating the tragedy for power. And at 6:47 p.m., a new video surfaced. Surveillance footage of Drew at a private bar, laughing with Carter Lee, clinking glasses and saying, "Who knew a missing kid would be such good timing?" Cameron watched it all unfold from a quiet rooftop in Brooklyn. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just whispered, "Let them see who he really is." Natalie sat beside him, sipping black coffee. "You think this will be enough?" "It's not about enough," Cameron said. "It's about momentum." And now the weight shifts. Jalen leaned against the doorframe, phone in hand. "We have 2 more big hits queued. One's financial. The other..." He hesitated. "What?" Cameron asked. Jalen looked him in the eye. "The other involves your father." Cameron's face hardened. "What about him?" He signed off on Drew's original board appointment. Cameron exhaled slowly, eyes drifting over the city skyline. "Then it's time we talk about legacy." The Thorne legacy wasn't built on innovation or disruption. It was built on inheritance, on tradition, on a silent agreement. The empire must pass cleanly from father to son, without scandal, noise, or emotion. Cameron had always known that, but he'd never expected the silence to become betrayal. That evening, he stood alone in the library of his childhood estate, not the one he lived in now, but the old stone house in Greenwich, Connecticut, where oak shelves held books that hadn't been touched since the Reagan administration, and portraits of ancestors stared down with marble judgment. His father, Grant Thorne, waited in the far armchair. At 78, he still wore suits at home, still drank neat scotch at 6 p.m., still believed control was best maintained by never raising your voice. "Why now?" Cameron asked. "Not sitting." "Why him?" Grant didn't look up from his drink. "Because you stopped managing the board. You became emotional, distracted. My daughter was kidnapped. That doesn't change fiduciary responsibility." Cameron clenched his jaw. "You co-signed Drew's appointment. You vouched for him. I vouched for stability. You let grief consume your judgment. I trusted him. Then you made a mistake." The silence that followed was thunderous. Grant finally looked up. "What happened to Ivy is a tragedy. But tragedy doesn't excuse weakness." Cameron laughed under his breath, a bitter sound. "You think grief is weakness? I think letting it cloud leadership is." Cameron took 2 slow steps forward. "Then let me be clear, Father. Drew didn't just exploit a tragedy. He orchestrated it." For the first time, Grant's expression shifted. "He didn't just take my daughter. He used her as a smokescreen, as a bargaining chip, as leverage to push me out. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. And I have proof. Grant stood now, suddenly very old and very tall at once. Then what do you want from me? Your voice. Your name. Publicly. Grant stared. You want me to side with you. I want you to undo what you helped create. There was a long pause. Then, Grant sat back down and looked into his glass. The Thorn name has always stood for control. Dignity. Quiet transitions. Cameron stepped closer. That name now stands for silence. While a child was left to die. Grant said nothing. And if you don't help me clear that name, Cameron added softly, I will destroy it. Completely. You think this legacy matters more than people, but I promise you I will make sure the world knows what this family sacrificed for power. He let the words hang. Then he turned and walked out. Outside, Natalie waited in the car. How'd it go? Cameron closed the door hard. We burn it down. All of it. Jalen called 5 minutes later. It's time. The offshore accounts are verified. The vote tampering records are clean. We hit them with both tomorrow morning. And the audio? Already packaged. It'll go out in the 9 a.m. blast to regulators, press, and DOJ. We're ready. Cameron stared out the window. His empire had become a battlefield, but now he knew exactly where to strike. At exactly 9 a.m., inboxes across the finance world began to detonate. Lexbridge executives, tech journalists, DOJ officers, SEC regulators, private equity firms, board members, competitors, whistleblower channels. They all received the same payload. On. Encrypted link. Inside. A precisely indexed archive of documents, audio recordings, video clips, and email chains. Each one a cut on the body of Lexbridge's corporate beast. Taken alone, they were suspicious. Together, they were damning. A spreadsheet showing $18 million funneled to shell companies traced back to Carter Lee. An audio file of Drew, mid-call, saying, Cameron won't fight. He still believes the board are his friends. A security log showing forged signatures on board votes while Cameron was at Ivy's bedside. And worst of all, a short video clip from the bar, grainy but unmistakable, Drew laughing. She's a kid, not a company. Within 2 hours, Lexbridge's stock dropped 27%. By midday, 5 of its corporate partners had announced temporary suspensions. By evening, the phrase corporate terrorism had entered headlines. But for Cameron, the real win wasn't public. It was private. At 3:43 p.m., an internal Slack message leaked from Lexbridge Legal. The DOJ wants full access to server logs by morning. They're bringing subpoenas. The empire was bleeding. But blood draws sharks. At 4:26 p.m., Natalie burst into Cameron's temporary office, pale. Jalen's gone. What? He left a voicemail. Said he was pulling out. That it's getting too dangerous. Cameron froze. That doesn't sound like him. I know. He dialed immediately. Straight to voicemail. Again. Nothing. Then his phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Tell the CEO to stop. Or the boy disappears next. Natalie's face drained of color. They hadn't just found Jalen. They'd found Jalen. In an instant, the mission changed. It was no longer about revenge. It was about protection. Natalie opened her laptop, fingers moving fast. I'm pinging Jalen, last known location. He was on his bike heading toward Bushwick at 3 p.m. Then his GPS went dark. They used him to get to Jalen, Cameron said, voice tight. And now they're using Jalen to get to you. They exchanged a glance. Then Natalie whispered what neither wanted to say aloud. This is war now. They activated a protocol they'd never wanted to use blackline. A last resort failsafe for threats that went beyond reputation or finance. Cameron's personal guard detail, hired initially to protect Ivy, was reassembled. He called in favors from contacts in cybersecurity, federal law enforcement, and even an ex-spy who owed him from a failed acquisition in Moscow. By midnight, a live trace had locked onto a van, last seen outside a condemned textile factory in Queens. Jalen might be inside, the agent said. "We go now," Cameron ordered. "Sir." "It could be a trap." "I know." He strapped on the vest anyway. At 1:27 a.m., Cameron and two operatives entered the factory. They crept through dust-choked corridors, guns drawn, flashlights cutting slices through the dark. And then they heard it. A cough. A voice. Small. Raspy. "I told you. He'll come." They found Jalen tied to a chair. Bruised, but alive. He was bloody and barely conscious, but breathing. Cameron dropped to his knees. "I've got you. I've got you." Jalen looked up with fire in his eyes. "Tell me you brought a camera." They had, and what it captured in the next 5 minutes would go viral across the globe. Because just as Cameron lifted Jalen into his arms, another voice rang out from the shadows. Slow, mocking, clapping. "Well played, CEO." Carter Lee stepped forward, flanked by two men in suits. "You exposed the rot," Carter said. "But you forgot rot spreads." He smiled. "You think Drew's your real enemy?" Cameron stared, breath shallow. "You have no idea how deep this goes." The warehouse felt colder after Carter's words, like the metal walls absorbed the chill of what was being revealed. Cameron didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He simply stood, Jalen steady in his arms, and said, "Then tell me. Show me how deep it goes." Carter chuckled, stepping closer. "You really don't know, do you?" He nodded at the unconscious Jalen. "This wasn't about Drew. He's the front. The distraction. The dumb face of a very old game." Cameron shifted slightly, shielding Jalen with his shoulder. 5 years ago," Carter continued, "when Lexbridge first pushed into biotracking and behavioral AI, your board took a vote. A majority decided to enter defense contracting. You dissented." "I said it was unethical," Cameron replied. "And you were right. But ethics don't fund re-elections, or stock buybacks, or private islands." Carter's voice dropped to a whisper. "They didn't just ignore you. They planned your removal from that day forward. Your daughter's kidnapping was just a convenient opening." Cameron stared. "You're saying this was planned? 5 years ago? Piece by piece. The moment you became a liability. And Drew? An opportunist. Useful. Disposable." Cameron looked down at Jalen, who was still trembling. "He's a kid. What could he possibly threaten that required this?" Carter's eyes narrowed. "He has something we don't. Witness memory. Your daughter trusted him. She told him names, places, descriptions. That's why you grabbed him. That's why we failed." Cameron took a slow and deliberate breath. "So what now? You gonna kill us?" "No," Carter said with a wolfish smile. "We're going to let you walk out of here. Because you won't win, Cameron. You can't fight us all. Even if you take Lexbridge down, the machine keeps running. Different names, same gears. You're scared," Cameron said quietly. "Otherwise you wouldn't be here, explaining yourself like a Bond villain." Carter's smile faltered. "You're scared because this time, the story's not in your hands. It's in his." He nodded at Jalen. Carter didn't respond. Instead, he stepped back into the shadows. "Enjoy your victory," he called out. "You've earned your martyrdom." And then he was gone. Natalie sat in the car with Jalen's head in her lap while medics worked around her. Jalen, wrapped in a blanket, held onto Cameron's arm tightly. Neither of them spoke, until Jalen said, They don't even see me. Not really. Cameron looked down. That's why they'll lose, Jalen whispered. They don't count people like me. You're not invisible anymore, Cameron said. You're the reason the lights are turning on. By sunrise, Cameron was back at the war table, only now it wasn't a boardroom. It was Natalie's garage, turned strategy HQ. The whiteboard held 6 names. All of them are powerful. All of them connected by money, contracts, and secrets buried beneath Lexbridge's official reports. I don't want revenge anymore, Cameron said. I want exposure. Systemic. Permanent. Natalie circled one name. Then we start here. Senator Alden. He funneled money into Carter's firm 3 months before Ivy disappeared. The same week, he filibustered the bill on tech surveillance. And his son's firm manages one of the Lexbridge shell accounts. Cameron looked around at the people now gathered in that cramped space. Jalen, still bruised, was typing faster than ever. Jalen, silent but sharp-eyed, piecing together timelines with a focus Cameron had never seen in a child. Elena arriving late with court documents. Natalia pulling strings. Burning bridges. Smiling like fire. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was a reckoning. Cameron had always known the system could hit back, but he had underestimated how quickly it would strike and how low it would go. By the morning after Carter's confession, headlines had shifted. Not about Lexbridge's corruption. Not about Ivy. Not about Carter's criminal trial. No, they were about Cameron, CEO, accused of fabricating daughter's kidnapping to distract from embezzlement probe. Sources allege Cameron Thorne Paid Street, youth to stage rescue narrative. Former board members suggest mental instability in Thorne recent actions. They hit like sniper shots, cold, precise, coordinated. Natalie slammed her laptop shut. They're using your own tactics against you. Same flood strategy. Same SEO boosts. Same anonymous sources. They planned this in advance, Elena muttered, scanning a cease and desist email from a federal judge. They had this ready the moment you pushed too far. The plan was clear. Discredit him before the DOJ moved. But that wasn't the part that made Cameron's chest go tight. It was the photo. A blurred screenshot someone had dug through an old encrypted drive and found a frame from Ivy's birthday 3 years ago. Cameron, drink in hand, laughing. Next to him, Carter Lee. The caption read, Thorne's friendship with a disgraced hedge fund manager raises questions. They're going to frame you as an insider, Elena said. As the real architect. Cameron leaned back in his chair. They'll try, he said. But we're going to beat them at their own game. Jalen was quiet that morning. Too quiet. He sat cross-legged on the rug in the safe house, staring at the butterfly necklace he now wore like a talisman. Ivy had given it to him after her first therapy session, saying, It kept me safe. Now it's your turn. But Jalen didn't feel safe, had felt hunted, because the night before, he had received a text from a number he didn't recognize. We know who you are, Jalen. And we know where your little brother sleeps. He hadn't told Cameron. He didn't want to make him choose between protecting the mission and protecting the boy who'd already survived too much. But it was eating at him. That feeling of being small again. Invisible. Vulnerable. And for the first time since he met Cameron, he wanted to run. Meanwhile, the legal war escalated. 2 Lexbridge board members swore that Cameron had greenlit defense contracts years ago. A doctored email that had never been sent mysteriously surfaced in the SEC's inbox, implying Cameron had approved the transfer of funds Carter had stolen. Worse, a former PR consultant paid off, likely came forward claiming Cameron had ordered her to stage emotional bait, using his daughter's image for public sympathy. The walls were closing in, and that's when Natalie brought the last straw. They froze your accounts. Cameron raised an eyebrow. All of them. Even he couldn't hide the flicker of fear. Not for himself, but for the dozens of people depending on him now. They want to starve the resistance. Elena said. No, Cameron said. They want us to break protocol, to lash out, so they can call us dangerous. But what if we are dangerous? Jalen asked from the doorway. Everyone turned. He looked rough scars, still healing, but his eyes burned with clarity. What if we use what they fear most? Truth. Live. Unedited. Cameron blinked, then leaned forward slowly. You mean a press conference? Jalen shook his head. I mean a reckoning. The invitation arrived on Lexbridge letterhead, elegant and smug. Annual Global Governance and Technology Summit, Geneva. Attendance confirmed. 176 global CEOs, 38 heads of state. 122 journalists. Theme: Power with Purpose. It was a trap, but it was also the stage Cameron needed. He stared at it in silence while Jalen explained the plan. We hijacked the panel. 5 minutes in, you tell them the truth. But it won't be just to the room, it'll be live, fed into a secured server, broadcast through a chain of mirror nodes that I'll set up. Natalie added, We'll frame it like you're giving a legacy speech. The elite love that crap. Then drop the bomb. Elena raised an eyebrow. And when the security guards start dragging him off stage, we'll be gone, Jalen said. The moment he hits minute 6, we cut the feed from Geneva and jump to the second signal. To where? Cameron asked. Jalen grinned. A rooftop in Zurich, overlooking the whole goddamn banking district. You're insane, Elena muttered. And I think it'll work. The morning of the summit, Cameron dressed like a ghost of his former self. Sharp, clean lines, navy tailored, Rolex polished. He looked every bit the man they once welcomed into elite circles, because that's what they expected. Familiarity, respect. What didn't they expect? That this CEO had come to kill his kind. Watching from the monitor room, Jalen whispered to Natalie. He doesn't look scared. He's been scared, she replied. Now he's just focused. The speech started predictably. Cameron took the stage at the Geneva Interworld Center, smiling politely. The crowd applauded, lulled by status and routine. He began with, When I started my first company, I was 23. I didn't know what the word governance meant. I thought it meant growth, control, scale, laughter, nods. Now I know governance isn't about control. It's about who gets to decide what truth looks like. The room stilled. For too long, I thought being a CEO meant creating value. I now realize it often means assigning value to lives, deciding who's visible and who's not. He paused, looked directly into the camera. 4 months ago, my daughter was kidnapped. Not for ransom, not for politics, but because she knew too much, and because I refused to sell my conscience like I'd sold everything else. A murmur rose from the crowd. The moderator shifted uncomfortably. Some of you sitting here, Cameron said, sweeping his eyes across the audience, knew this. Some of you funded it. Some of you are still doing worse. One hand went to his lapel. He clicked the mic switch. And now the world gets to see what you've all tried to hide. The feed cut. For 2 seconds. Silence. Then, Jalen's encrypted stream activated. The screen lit up. Live from Zurich. Behind Cameron stood the skyline of Europe's richest banks, and beside him, Jalen, dressed plainly, with a butterfly necklace glowing under the rising sun. This is Jalen, Cameron said. He saved my daughter. He exposed a conspiracy. And he's here because he was never supposed to matter. Jalen stepped forward, voice quiet but unwavering. They said I was a nobody, that I wouldn't survive the streets, that my word wouldn't count. He looked into the lens. But I heard them. All of them. I heard names. I heard plans. I saw what they did, and I wrote it all down. Jalen dropped the files live. Real-time leaks, hit encrypted public drives, bank transfers, shell companies, fake charities, judicial bribes, government collusion, all tied to Lexbridge and its allies. The world watched. The stock market froze, and then the shot rang out. The sniper hit the wall behind Cameron, narrowly missing. Jalen dropped. Jalen screamed through comms. Elena's voice cut in. "Abort! Get out now!" But Cameron didn't flinch. He stood tall, arms outstretched. "This is how you know they're afraid," he shouted. "They don't sue. They don't debate. They shoot." Another shot. Sparks flew, then blackout. 1 day later, Cameron's team was in disarray in the hidden bunker beneath Lion. Jalen had suffered a minor injury, but he was safe. Jalen was on the verge of a breakdown. Natalie reviewed the data. The entire leak was still intact. The live stream had hit 42 million views in just 18 hours. The world had awakened, but Cameron sat in silence, because there was something he hadn't told anyone. Just before stepping onto that stage, someone had altered the escape route. They were supposed to withdraw through a secure tunnel, but that tunnel had been ambushed. Cameron knew. Someone on the inside had betrayed them, and he knew who. The chapter closes on a quiet shot. Jalen was asleep, still clutching the necklace. Cameron stared at the door, his fingers tightening around a secure phone, displaying a verification code from deep inside counterintelligence. The mole had just sent another data packet to the other side, signed with a single letter. N. Natalie. The bunker room in Lion was drowned in a heavy silence. Jalen lay asleep, still clutching the necklace Ivy had given him. Jalen sat slumped beside a row of darkened monitors, eyes unfocused, as if his mind was stuck on a loop, replaying the moment the bullet pierced the Geneva wall inches from Cameron's ribs. Only Cameron remained standing, and only he knew. Natalie had vanished 3 hours ago. No trace. No signal from her tracker watch. No authentication code. No explanation. Only one line of flagged data, buried deep in Jalen's system logs. Node reroute authorized by N. Park. Cameron didn't rage. No shouting, no curses, just a long, quiet breath. He stepped into the hallway, his phone clenched tight, and a soft green light reflected in his eyes. Natalie. Why? 2 years ago, Cameron had personally posted Natalie's bail after she'd been forced out of an international PR firm for exposing money laundering tied to a political campaign. She once told him, "I don't know who the good guys are anymore. But if you're lighting the match, I'll bring the gasoline." Now she was the one setting him on fire. Elena appeared quietly behind him, voice low. She might have been coerced. They have leverage. Maybe family. Or maybe she was never with us at all. No, Cameron said. She believed in the cause. But when a system starts dying, it doesn't retaliate with reason. It retaliates with instinct, with fear. The next morning, Jalen awoke to a flood of breaking headlines. Interpol issues. Arrest warrant for CEO Cameron Thorne, alleged mastermind behind global financial sabotage plot. Insider whistleblower claims Thorne sought to unleash national chaos. Natalie's face appeared on screen, delivering the statement, wearing a black coat. Eyes swollen, voice trembling. "I'm sorry, but I couldn't let him drag the whole world into his war." Jalen shouted, "What the hell are you doing?" Cameron remained quiet. He gently placed a hand on Jalen's arm. His eyes held no anger, only a bitter understanding. He knew the cost of taking up this fight, becoming a target, not just for enemies but for allies too. But betrayal didn't kill Cameron. It activated him, because in the wreckage, he found a forgotten news circuit where dozens of anonymous voices began uploading raw data. Former assistants of corrupt CEOs, bodyguards, IT staff, cleaners, people who had seen too much and could no longer stay silent. Jalen looked up. "We've still got one piece left to play, and I know who's gonna move it." Cameron turned. Jalen stood, gripping the folder Ivy had given him days earlier. It contains Carter's original, handwritten accounting records. I'll speak. I'll tell everything. Anywhere. To anyone. Still willing to listen. I'm not afraid anymore. Cameron placed a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. No, Jalen. You're not going to tell just anyone. He knelt, looking him straight in the eye. You're going to tell the world. 3 months later, on a crisp morning in Zurich, as the snow began to melt and the first sunlight of spring glazed the silver rooftops, Cameron sat in a small attic office above an old building in the city's art district. There was no company logo, no financial dashboards, just a wooden desk, a few messy children's drawings on the wall, and folders stamped with 3 simple letters. MSF, Jalen, Ivy Foundation. Jalen walked in, holding a thick file, dressed in his school uniform, but still very much the same boy, resilient, sharp, and now, someone with a future. We saved 93 more kids this quarter. 4 former housekeepers have been promoted to dormitory supervisors. Cameron nodded. That's more than a company. That's a movement. In the corner of the room, Ivy was drawing. She was 10 now, her eyes brighter, though the pain had not vanished entirely. The butterfly necklace still hung from her neck, a reminder, and a symbol of survival. Elena entered behind Jalen, holding a bulletin. Breaking news. Drew Spencer sentenced to 27 years, no parole. Assets seized. His corporate shares were redirected to non-profit causes. And Natalie? Cameron asked. Elena paused, just for a beat. She's in hiding. Patagonia. New name. But she sent me a draft proposal for transparent education policy. Seems like she's still fighting. Cameron smiled faintly, eyes drifting to the window. That afternoon, the 3 of them left the office and walked across the central square, where a new statue had just been unveiled, an image of a man kneeling, holding the hands of a street boy and a little girl. The sculpture bore a name, the one who saw the invisible. Etched beneath it was a plaque. Not all who hold power are corrupt. Not all who are voiceless are weak. But when the invisible rise, the world must listen. From the Journal of Jalen, age 13. During the quiet ceremony, there were no cameras, no journalists, just a gathering of people once deemed not worth remembering. Housekeepers, drivers, warehouse workers, ex-convicts, and children who had once slept beneath bridges. They stood together, like a family. Cameron didn't speak. He simply watched as Jalen stepped onto a small platform, took a deep breath and said, "When I stood on the street one afternoon, selling candy to survive, I never thought anyone would listen to me. But a man, a CEO, didn't just see me. He believed in me. And because of that, I didn't just survive. I got to live. From today on, we will not let anyone live in the dark again." After the speech, Ivy tugged Cameron's sleeve. "Daddy, we're a real family now, right?" Cameron knelt, wrapping both Jalen and Ivy in his arms. "No, sweetheart. We're something even more substantial than a family. We're a belief that even though power can buy silence, it can never buy justice."